So our first subject is settling in for the long haul. And I've got Robin Clegg. Robin, her community suffered the Cedar Fire in 2003 in San Diego. It is still, I believe, one of the top 3 wildfires with regards to number of homes destroyed. There was almost 3,000 homes that were destroyed by that wildfire. And then it was followed 4 years thereafter with another firestorm in 2007. And so Robin led her community's recovery efforts from both of those. Robin also serves as the chair of the Southern California VOAD, San Diego County VOAD, and is a board member for the disaster leadership team. The other thing I'll tell you about Robin is that she and 2 of her cohorts that worked these wildfires with her came to Bastrop after Bastrop County lost 1,700 homes, and they were our mentors. So we actually had someone to mentor us. And Robin, still to this day, is on my speed dial. And the interesting part is I'm now on hers. Right. Carlene Anders is your other presenter today. And she is our badass. For real. For real. Carlene was a smoke junkie. In her younger years, she likes to say. She still volunteers with the Volunteer Fire Department. She is executive director of the Okanagan Long-Term Recovery Team, which is in Washington. She also serves as the mayor of Pateros. So you have a well-rounded person up here that has basically seen disaster from every angle you can feasibly see disaster from the government side, as well as the individual recovery side. And kind of their long-term recovery has been a whole community approach, where they not only help individuals, but they also are assisting businesses and basically their whole community in recovery. And in San Diego, Robin's recovery was much like Houston is doing, in that, because it's a big city, it was divided up into basically sectors. And then those sectors reported into one centralized long-term recovery organization. So these 2 are going to get you into this conversation about long-term recovery, because we all know it is not a sprint, it is a marathon. It took, literally, you were still writing checks from the 2003 wildfire when the 2007 wildfire happened. And you still have one outstanding.
Yeah, still writing checks for a 2003 survivor, so yeah.
So that's how long it can actually go. Not to scare you. But, you know, I will tell you that every time the Bastrop County Long-Term Recovery Team tried to demobilize, we had another disaster. So you might not want to ever try to demobilize.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, Chris, very much. So, mic'd up, we're all heavy with mics. We'll see how this goes. I'm also been a track coach for 20 years, so I tend to yell a little bit. So if it's a bit loud, let me know. But as Chris said, a long haul is definitely a long haul. And so, and we're 4 years, 2014 was our fires, and we're still meeting with unmet needs once a week, every Friday, have been from the very beginning. And so it is truly takes quite a bit of time. And I think Robin, 2003 with checks, I hope to God that we're not doing it that long, but as I told Chris, 2 weeks ago we had flooding. in our area. And I said, you can just keep your floods to yourself. I don't want to repeat Texas cycles, but anyway.
So we did finally write our last check for our 2007, probably about 3 months ago, and still working with a client, a survivor from 2003. And the key is every survivor moves at their own pace also. And so we hold the money for them while they're in their building process. And the process is slow because she's an elderly woman and doing it all on her own because volunteer labor and stuff is long gone, as you can well imagine, and fairly so. So yes, when they say long haul, they mean long haul. And keeping your 501c3 alive, if you have one, will be critical, because we got rid of ours in 2003 because we thought we'd never be hit with a disaster again. So do not be that naive, or some would say stupid, which would be what I think that my choice to do that was stupid. But anyway, so it is a long haul and a large commitment.
So one of the things for us in 2014, we lost 356 homes in that round of wildfires, and the following year we had more of a drought, a more severe drought season. And I can tell you that I believe in my heart that if we had not had this situation happen in 2014, we would have lost more lives in 2015 than we did. We learned a lot, and I think part of what we're doing here today is that learning process and the ability to share, and I'm so excited to get to know you and your stories coming up. So as we move through this, if there's interjections and things you'd like to share, we'd like to make sure that you do that.
Hey, and let me ask a really quick question out here, if you don't mind. How many of you, this is your first disaster to work on? Because that kind of will help me to, oh wow, quite a few of you. Okay, good information. And so that means you're probably all at a different learning curve. So
Unless marriages count.
there could be some value. There could be some value. That's a half now. Okay.
So how many of you have seen this? I'm surprised. I would have expected a few more. This is something that we live by to just kind of check kind of where we work. As you know, communities rise up together at that beginning, and that everyone's there, the relief stage, people are active, they're very much a part of everything. And so there's kind of this heroic stage, right, that you go through. From there, then people start wondering, how come we're not going farther faster? How come we're not recovering quicker? What is truly, who's doing what, and why isn't it happening faster, right? So then you start to have this disillusion stage where things are happening but people get tired. They start to drag, because they can be heroic for a while. Robin?
Well, one of my team members calls that part the sexy part, where everyone wants to be on the television, be involved. People that are ultimately not in it for the long haul. They're maybe in it for themselves, some of those folks. So she called that the sexy part. And then when the sexy part goes away, then we're going down here because there's not as many people on the ground, it's not in the press, and everyone's wondering what's going on.
Yeah, so as you come into this harder part, it's really important that you be able to keep up your momentum, keep up your strength, and keep delivering in a way that you know is going to improve your communities. And it gets difficult. The funders change, right? The funding tends to be up in the upfront piece, and then from there you have to push harder and harder and harder as you go along. So, and typically, that line right there is about typically the anniversary, so 1 year anniversary of things. we're obviously not there yet for you folks. Almost. Yeah, almost. But you guys are kind of in this bottom part right now, aren't you? In that section. And so, and then as you start to rebuild and things start to come around, you're going to see that things rise again. And then you start to do your celebrations and your pieces that will improve your community, where you see the results and the differences.
Yeah, and lean on your team members when you are feeling very low. Lean on your team members, because chances are, if there's 5 or 6 of you, someone's up when everyone else is down. And definitely lean on them to help remind you of what you've achieved already and bring you back up.
Okay, so these are just some of the pieces that we found helpful. Obviously, I didn't know anything about disaster other than seeing New Orleans, seeing things on TV, frankly. And so it was a whole new language. All those acronyms, it's like
Horrible.
I mean, I have a degree, but I got a whole new degree after doing this. And
I never felt so dumb with those acronyms. I would go at night and write them down and concentrate and try and remember what each one meant, because it was a foreign language, truly.
so, and I'm sure you're doing that right now. Those of you particularly who are new, if you aren't doing that, you should be doing that. It will make you feel empowered.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon you'll be talking that same language if you're not already. Okay, so I recommend that you save all your materials. All right, you're inundated, right, with all these materials. And I remember thinking, well, I don't know if I'll use that. And it ended up in these boxes, right? At the beginning, you have all these piles of things. And then when it was time, when I needed that piece, I literally had to sort through all those resources and find exactly what I wanted, because I remembered that this was for this piece of information. And so, if you have a chance, the sooner you can file that into something reasonable and know where everything is, the better. Try and keep your access to all those resources.
Yeah, and I remember Church World Service slapped a 100-page document on my recovery desk where I was helping the people, and said, if you read this, you'll know how to do it. Well, so I did read that at the 4-year mark. Miraculously was still able to do it without it. So don't get hyper-focused on having to read those documents that are too overwhelming to read, because a lot of what you're going to learn is going to be, because you're sharp and smart, that's why you're here for the people, and so you'll learn it, through this type of situation and others. So don't think that you have to just, or the National VOAG Guide or any of those things. 4 years until I read it, and I love to read, but I did not have the capacity until that time.
So obviously try not to reinvent the wheel. Things have been done out there, and try and utilize those. That's one of the things that disaster leadership is trying to do. They're trying to put documents, we're trying to collect all those documents and put them in one centralized location where you can go in and alter those and make those available when you need them. It's been so interesting getting a call from Florida and saying, I need this contract for an independent contractor for an executive director position. Do you have that? Yes, we do. Here's a template. Those kind
the
of
job
pieces.
description. Do you have the job description?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
So again, there is materials out there. Hopefully, that's one of the things that took a long time for us, and to try and make it so that it fit us. And FEMA does a pretty good job in their vows bringing forth some of that paperwork, but this is just a nice centralized way to find materials that are.
Well, right, and knowing that our documents that we're using, that we have kind of restructured from being the people on the ground versus someone that's maybe never been in the field that's creating the document, it makes all the difference in the world. So we definitely will have all that to share with you folks.
So of course, I don't think you'd be here if you were not open to new information and ideas, because you are all unique and have unique backgrounds here, and I applaud you for being here. This is not an easy road, and people are going to tell you, they're going to tell you to do something or not do something. I just want to say, just make sure you don't ever get run over. And I have a feeling that you people aren't run over very easily. But there will be times when you're down in this long haul that you need some backing, or you need to say, I am here for this reason, and I'm okay, and my choices that I make and what I do are right. And I'm going to stick by those and stand by your guns.
Yep. That reminds me of something that happened for me in my small community of Lakeside. And one of they're my good friends, Church World Relief Committee, but they're now World Renew. They kept calling me every day. We need to come in, we're going to come in, and we're going to rebuild your community, we're going to rebuild your community, we're going to rebuild your community. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, and my people are not ready. So we didn't have case man, we had nothing. We had no money. I didn't even know what I was doing, and I kept saying, we're not ready, we're not ready. And they'd call every day, and finally I said, please don't call me anymore until I can call you, and I promise that I will call you as soon as we need the help. I didn't burn the bridge. I just said, I've got to focus on getting these people in case management. And thankfully, a year later, when I was able to call them and say, are you still willing to come? They said, absolutely. So don't be afraid to push back when an organization wants to come and get on the ground right away. While that is wonderful to serve your survivor, if you don't have the case management piece, and then all of a sudden you do Bob Smith's house and Bob had a bunch of hidden money, the other people are not happy. So don't be afraid to say we can't accept it right now.
So I love this quote, if you don't know, learn. If you already know, apply. If you know and have applied, improve. I think it's very important that you never get stagnant in long-term recovery, or it'll pass you by. This, as I say, as we've been saying, this is the long haul. That means that once you've done it for 2 years, that doesn't mean you know everything. And that you're going to keep doing the same thing in the same way. You need to continually look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And because Chris did quite a few disasters on the in-between of mine, I'm calling Chris, like she said, to ask her about CDBG funds, different things for our community. So yes, constant learning, constant learning.
Community Development Block Grant.
Funds.
CDBG.
Sorry.
That's a government one. Okay? So creating good systems, sustainable systems. It's important to take the time and attention to implement systems that will save time and energy. I am a big believer in creating systems that will save you time and energy. If you do not take the time to set things up that are for you, for your community, in the likeness of your community, you will not, 2 years down the road, you're going to want to change it. I don't know how many times we set up QuickBooks and rechanged the line items in QuickBooks. Have you all done that? Any of you done that yet? It's frustrating because 6 months down the road, you're redoing your stuff for your board. And
I need to show you my system on QuickBooks. I never had to change.
Oh, now see, that's impressive.
There you go.
So we changed several times. I am not a financial person. So anyway, but
find the systems that work for you. That really is the key. And spend some time on those infrastructure pieces. Those are the infrastructures of your recovery.
I already smarted off, so.
She's good at that. And make sure those systems can stand up over time. And that's particularly with staff changes. You will have staff changes as you go through this process. Hopefully no one here will change, but you will see some staff changes. And so you need to be realistic about what you can sustain as that changes and adapts over time.
Yeah, and all of you should be here in the future, so long as you're grasping what the long haul means. So long as you and your family knows what long haul is, there's no reason for you not to be here.
So we're going to ask you the question right now. What systems are you implementing that help you function better right now? Does anyone have any ideas of what you're doing right now that you want to share?
Oh, you want me to talk?
You have the microphone, so somebody asked.
Oh, okay.
This is our first
Also
interactive
learn to follow
question.
directions.
So hopefully you all had coffee. And I'm not a coffee drinker, but hopefully, who wants to share some systems that you're doing?
Does anyone have a system?
Oh, for God's sake, please say yes.
Because we will be on a subject matter later that will be very critical.
Yes. Here we go. Please wait for the mic. Sorry.
Hang on. I'm not the fastest person. Oops. It's good for me.
We have established a headquarters for volunteers to come and stay in our community and work on homes. So we got a designated headquarters to house volunteers. We have that in place already.
Excellent.
That
A
is
designated
excellent.
place for volunteers? Excellent. We still have those same places 4 years later, those same agreements and those same pieces.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. We're the same. We have 5 locations throughout, from the coastal bend, Corpus, all the way up to Beaumont in the Golden Triangle, where we're housing, feeding, and dispatching teams. We actually hired site coordinators to stay on site, assess homes, and find out the needs, make sure they're up on their taxes, all that kind of stuff. We also retained a warehouse in San Antonio so we can dispatch all of our supplies out and have a manager running that. I'm with the Texas District
Excellent.
of Lutheran Church.
All
I didn't
right.
think about that. Make sure that you say who you're with. That's
Please,
the
yeah,
important part.
introduce yourself and who you're with when you do
And
that.
so, did you say who you were with?
Yes, I'm Pastor Smith, and I'm with the Houghton County Shrine, long-term disaster.
All right, thank you. Anyone else want to share a system that you have?
Okay, we got a live one over here.
Good morning. My name is Morgan. I'm with Jewish Family Service in Houston, also with the Harris County Long-Term Recovery Committee there in Houston. We started after the Memorial Day floods in our area, an apartment and real estate guide where we work with local apartment complexes and realtors to provide low-cost, short-term leases, no deposits or extra charges for families who have to stay short-term while their homes are being repaired. It's been very, very helpful in identifying places that are affordable for families who are paying mortgage and rental while their home is being repaired.
Excellent. We found realtors to be an amazing resource, partly for our response, getting our numbers of damage. They were very helpful in that process, and then in the future, later on, they actually did some grants and were part of our unmet needs. The Realtors Association were part of that, giving rental grants, basically. So, yeah, anyone else want to share a system, and then we'll move on. Okay, thank you so much. So, continuing to assess where you are and your progress towards the goals that you've set. It's really important that you continually assess. It will always change. I call it the big 3D puzzle, and you're always trying to put a new piece to that puzzle together on a 3D scale. You never know. It's part of the challenge. I know that everyone here in this room is willing and able to attack that challenge because it is constantly changing.
I'm still catching my breath. Keep going.
One of my favorite quotes here is, you wake up every morning to fight the same demons that left you so tired the night before, and that, my love, is bravery. So you guys wake up every single day. I don't know how many of you go to sleep thinking about recovery, wake up thinking about recovery, you dream about recovery. That is one of the stages, at least I assume that's part of what you're doing at this point. I know that was what I did. And so.
Yeah, 18 hours a day of awake time, right? Working the disaster, and then hoping to get some sleep time without those dreams. So that's the reality. I think first year for me was probably 18 hours a day, focused on others and not myself or my family. So remember those other people in your life.
So, and as Chris mentioned, it's been interesting for me to go from the response phase as a firefighter who was on those fires in an engine to the relief stage, watching that happen. I was part of the incident command team for the resource management piece, to then moving into the short-term recovery, starting to get the groups formed, and then into long-term recovery. And as Robin's kind of anti-government a little bit, agency. So she's like, well, you're mayor, you didn't know what. I said I was a volunteer firefighter when I started this. I was elected mayor after the fact.
I said, okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, we had a little discussion about that. However, one of the things that you should know that as you're going through this process, your pieces of your community have changed. They have changed. And so for us, our mayor had been mayor for 6 months, and she had won the vote by 1 vote. She had had a grievance with the 14-year mayor over a goat.
Oh.
There was a goat ordinance, and she wanted her goat in city limits. She did a Facebook write-in campaign and won by 1 vote. That was our leading government at the time the fire happened, and she lost her home, and her mom lost her home in the fire. And so so of course she resigned. And so what you need to understand is that in these situations with tragedy, things are constantly changing. You will constantly have to reassess because people may or may not be there in the roles that they are currently in or were in before the disaster. So again, continually assess.
Yeah, and I remember the moment when my sister told me, I can't do recovery with you anymore because my husband and my children said no more. So the faces change, absolutely. It's important. And one little government piece. That's not to say that I don't have my FEMA boyfriends. They're the FEMA Vals that are amazing. And that's what I call them. They have been in my life since 2003 and are still today. And we're on speed dial with each other. So there is some, and our state Val also. So there are definitely some key people in my life that are government.
So continue to adapt those plans as needed as well. Don't be afraid because it was working 6 months ago, not to go ahead and change it. Sometimes we get into a rut and we kind of silo and we continue to do the same thing. Don't be afraid to change those plans. Don't be hasty in changing them, but consider when you need to do that.
You know what? I have to say this because I won't remember it later. I used to sit at my desk and send emails, and this was, probably about the time period that you guys are at. And I'd say, why is that person not emailing me back? Like, what is their problem? And then, and I was so focused on that I lost sight that you could actually pick up the phone because I was so tunnel vision. And it was amazing how many people actually answered the phone and were too overwhelmed to respond to email, but would actually pick up the phone. So bear that in mind. That was something that I was didn't realize until I tried it.
Absolutely. I'm one of those people that didn't answer the email. So,
So you get it.
yeah. Okay, conflict will continually resurface. You need to understand that there will always be conflict. There will always be a situation that comes up where you have to, again, reassess, and someone's going to say, I don't like the way you're doing this. And so you want to be strong as you're working through that. Make sure that you have a clear agenda, a clear reason for doing what you're doing, but be strong in that because you're going to have conflict.
There's going to be conflict. Absolutely. And the conflict comes in all shapes and sizes. It'll be amongst your team members. Absolutely. One team will think, oh, well, because I was involved in a group of seven communities, and we all did our individual thing at our community level, but when it came to case management and unmet needs, we're collaborating, and it all is going through the same system. And if a donation came in of some kind, well, why didn't Lakeside tell Crest? How did you get that? How did you get all those faucets? How did you, all that type of thing. And sometimes, it's donor specific to a community, but kind of keeping that transparency, and also not, I don't even know if this is on this subject matter, but I'm just going to say it anyway, but don't hoard your data like I did. Don't be afraid to let other organizations that want to help you, be protective of it, but don't let your worry about taking care of your people get in the way of taking care of your people. Okay. Sometimes I got to shoot stuff off the hip because I won't remember it later, okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect. All right. Okay, so again, expect the next challenge. You're going to have roadblocks, and you want to take it on full on. You're going to have one thing after another put in front of you. And how many of you have already dealt with roadblocks?
Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay, let me ask a question. How many of you are involved in an organized, solid, long-term recovery group? Raise your hand.
Good question.
Well, you probably are, but, okay.
Oh boy, I'm Beth Tatum. I'm the president of the Coastal Bend Disaster Recovery Group, nonprofit. And so when you say solid, organized, what's the definition? Because it seems to ebb and flow. We're trying to collaborate with all these different organizations. Some are local, some are out of the area and coming in. And so, we've got this set of bylaws, and that's sort of our marching orders, but then we have all these other goals. And so the board is continually having to, reassess. So what makes it solid? Because we continue to have board members who come on elected as a director and then they leave, or their participation wanes. And what's organized about it? Well, okay, we have a regular meeting, but golly gee, it feels like we got a bunch of ants running around in 6 counties, and sometimes we don't know what one ant is doing on one hill and so forth.
So
what do you mean?
How often do you meet?
Well, our board of directors meets at least once a month. Sometimes we have issues and our bylaws allow us.
Meet sooner.
Sometimes we
once
allow.
a week.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Because we can't get them to meet that often.
Okay.
Our unmet needs meets once a week, okay? And then we have a general meeting where all of the organizations are invited to come in here. And if we have a quorum of directors, we can do business at that point.
But it sounds like you're doing business because you've got unmet needs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're serving the survivor.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a construction arm of our organization that has 110 cases that we're actively funding and managing, but there's another 15,000 totally destroyed homes in our 6 counties. So that was my question. What do you mean by solid, organized? Because it's an ebb and flow thing.
Well, and don't you think that
They
she's
are.
actually talking about what we're talking about up here?
So there's a difference between a fluid assessing group and solid. You're solid, Beth. You're solid. And because you're not going away, are you? No. Okay, so to me, if you're not going away, you're solid.
Yep.
Right? If you are there and committed to fixing and recovering your communities, you're solid. Now, you're going to be fluid. That's just the nature of disaster. And you're going to have to continually adapt. But that's part of the process. It's 100% part of the process. Or you disband, right? If you're not fluid and you don't adapt, then you disband. And then that's where you're not solid. Yep.
We're solid. You're solid.
All right. Okay. So again, we'd like to ask, what are some of the roadblocks and challenges you've experienced so far? Does anyone want to share? Nicely share, please.
But freely share. This meeting is about being able to freely share and
correct.
not have to hold anything back. Right, Chris? Okay.
Correct.
Good morning, my name is Carlene Egan and I'm with the Fort Bend County Office of Emergency Management. I help facilitate the Fort Bend Recovers long-term recovery group that we have. I would say one of our roadblocks that we've experienced is we had 2 main organizations, we have several others coming in, but 2 main local organizations providing home repair services. And they were big key partners of our long-term recovery group. And one group in the past couple months has actually folded, the organization in and of itself. And so now all the projects that they were working on or were getting ready to start, everything was just stalled, stopped. They're trying to wrap up some, but we're trying to reallocate some of those projects. We're trying to bring in more partners more quickly in order to pick up those projects. And understandably, we have a lot of residents that are upset because they don't understand what's going on. So that is something that we were not expecting. It is something that we are working through, but that was a roadblock that was thrown up right away.
I've got a question. Was the two organizations, are they for-profit or non-profit?
Nonprofit.
Interesting. So, like that, let's talk about vetting your nonprofits to make sure that they've been around for a long time. I'm just going to throw that out there. Seeking that information about them, because wherever our Mennonite friends are, they don't go away.
No, understood. And
yeah.
This organization had been in the community for years, and they had been vetted. It was just, there were other reasons as to why. Anyway, so that's why it kind of caught us off by surprise, because it was a partner that we were very familiar with and worked for a long time with. So yeah, but just as you mentioned, the players may change, and especially when they are actively involved in the middle of something, and then all of a sudden their projects are kind of put on hold. That was very, I wouldn't say necessarily startling, but it did catch us off guard.
Thank you for sharing that. That's exactly the kind of barriers that we're looking at. Yeah.
Good morning, I'm Carol Wooten, and from the Wharton County Recovery Team. Our biggest roadblock has been getting case management training. We have 2 full-time case managers, we cannot get them trained.
Really?
We've gone from everywhere from our local level to our congressman's office, and we cannot get them trained.
I think we could probably figure that out today, or to help figure out how to help with that.
Absolutely.
Something that we did within our Harris County is we created our own training. So we pulled some leaders from different parts. Me and Michelle created a basic case management training, and we started giving that training at United Way and creating forums for case managers to come together. I was going to say, I think one of our roadblocks was that you do have lots of agencies that have been around for a long time, however, may have never done disaster before. And so they come on board and they may not speak the same language as we do, and so it becomes very confusing for the clients about what disaster recovery looks like. And so we saw training as a really important factor immediately, that we needed to make sure that everyone understood the difference between disaster case management and long-term case management. And also everyone was speaking the same language with the client, so we weren't confusing the clients in the process.
Yeah,
Of
well,
course.
that was my question. Would you be willing to help another
Absolutely.
community?
We're in a town of 10,000.
Absolutely. I would love to share my contact information.
Excellent.
So, and I do want to point out on her comment there is a big difference between social case management and social services. And I know one of the things that in Washington State, they were advocating towards social case managers being our disaster case managers. And at that time, social services is overloaded and inundated with their own volume out of disaster. And I think it's really important that you find individuals, it can go both ways. I'm not saying that you can't have a social case manager, but a lot of times it's good to have disaster case management that is completely separate from the social services, just because of the overload and the capacities. When Harvey happened, it shifted everything that we did in Eastern Washington for fundraising. So it's okay. We sent some teams here from there that were working with us, but it has made our recovery change over time, and it's taken longer. We just did our last foundations last week for our last round of home building. So it does shift, it does change. Again, disaster is constantly adapting. Okay, identifying your support systems, knowing who you can talk to. How many of you have said something to somebody and thought they were a support system, and then it kind of backfired a little bit? Eventually, yeah? Okay, so you really want to find your support system that is going to be very trustworthy, that is going to fill your cup, okay? There are support systems that you think are initial support systems that may drain your cup of energy, and you want to make sure that you do not engage in those very often. Engage in the ones that are going to fill your cup up, and you're going to find that through the disaster process, you need different support systems than you had previously.
Yes, and part of that support system hopefully is your family, so that you're in contact with them like I was not. So make sure to stay connected with your family.
So, and with that, you don't want to overload them either.
No.
So she's been married.
Don't debrief. I've been married for 41 years, yeah.
And I've been married 30 years. So if I didn't have my husband and didn't have my support system, I can tell you I wouldn't be here today. It's that simple. He backfilled. I didn't do groceries, dishes, nothing for 4 years. He backfilled the whole thing, and with our kids and everything. So, but I did not go to him to cry on his shoulder necessarily for things. I called support systems that were different at 1:30 in the morning and said, I cannot believe there's another fire coming. You know, you have to be able to spread it out so people aren't saturated in your support systems.
And I actually called the government. I actually called FEMA, my FEMA Val, and let them know. I quit, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore, you know, all those things, and it's okay. And then they kind of talk you off the edge and bring you back in, and so
yeah,
they do exist in government, good people.
It's good to hear.
Me.
So know what helps you relax. How many of you find that you're in this constant state of tension? And then all of a sudden you breathe and you didn't even know you were in that state of tension? You know what I'm talking about? You want to continually figure out what's going to help you relax. Now, it took me about 2 years to figure that out in terms of relaxing because I didn't want to relax. Part of my job was to make sure that things were going forward all the time. And I did not want to, I could not walk downtown and not see someone that was a survivor. I couldn't go anywhere that I didn't see somebody that was hurting. And so I did not want to relax ever. And so it's going to be important in the long haul. Do what you need to do, but at the point where you start to see the symptoms that you're not thinking as well or sleeping as well or things are starting to, your capacity is starting to diminish, you need to relax. You need to figure those systems out.
Yeah, and I think it was probably a year and a half in for me that someone finally told me, well, you know, the people's lives are not threatened anymore. The life threat happened back at the disaster. So if you were to take a weekend off, no one's dying. And that is something you should remind yourself of all the time, because it's very easy to be in that manic state that you were at in the very, very beginning. I just had occasion to go to an event that our Operations of Emergency Services had on an earthquake thing, and I was on a question Q&A panel. And they actually had, so think about this, 3 women like y'all that are doing a disaster now in Southern California. Never did it before. And we're being asked questions. And I thought, this is the most horrible experience of my life. These poor women are in shell shock still. And one gal even got up and showed pictures of her family that was impacted. And she's supposed to be there as an expert. And I felt so horrible. And afterwards I said, okay, ladies, you're in what I call the manic phase. And so we need to talk so that you can get more directional in what you're doing, because you're too overwhelmed to even answer the questions that you're being asked. They literally couldn't, and they were written in front of them, and they literally couldn't, and it broke my heart. Because they should have never been put in that position, and I didn't really realize what was going on, or I might have said something. But so definitely don't put yourself in that position either. So the emergency part is over right now.
Okay, and so obviously you're dealing with a lot of high volume and high saturation. And so as I was saying, consider rotating things around so that you're not burning out your support systems. And again, broadening out. It's that same idea I was just talking about. I know there were times I was calling Jeff and other folks. Carla Mongan, if you know Carla, she was my FEMA val, and let me tell you, she was there for 2.5 months. Thank God for her. So you have people, and I still talk to her, and so when I came into Texas to help with Victoria County, I was able to understand and know what was going on because of those relationships. And so the more you broaden out, the better you get at having a support system. So one of the things you'll find here is that you don't know who your next best supporter is. Okay, so be open-minded to whomever you have out there as you start to get to know them, as you'll be amazed at what comes out of this over the next few years and who's going to actually support you. So, and we're coming up, we're real diligent about time here, but we're, is there anything else you wanted to say?
Or Chris gets mad.
Chris never gets mad. What are you talking about? She's never nervous about anything. So you guys have heard a ton about self-care. How many of you are tired of hearing about self-care? You feel like people have said that to you very much? Yeah, I see the head nods. Used to drive me nuts in the first year. Self-care, seriously? Okay, yeah, I'm doing just fine.
I've got it. I'm good.
Yeah, we're all good. We're all good. So it's all good until you get to a certain point, right? And so what you need to know is just really evaluate yourself and listen to those outside people that have the outside perspective that say, you know, you've only been sleeping 3 hours a night. You're starting to kind of mumble and drool from the, so maybe you might want to think about a little vacation or a day off or something, right? So what are you doing right now for your own self-care? Does anybody want to share that? Okay, so this is one of my favorite quotes. Do what you can as well as you can for as long as you can. And I just want to say that You folks in this room, it is a privilege to know you and for you to be here and for us to get to know you. I assume you have everything it takes to make things happen with this recovery. And it's just a privilege.
Absolutely. And one day, you all will be paying it forward like us. And that's how we do better disaster all along the way, is expanding that pay it forward group. So thank you all for being here.
Yeah. Is there any other general questions that we can entertain right now before we move to break? Yes.
How many people are just actually volunteers?
That aren't paid.
1, 2.
Okay? Yeah. Okay.
Quite a few.
About a third, it looks like.
So we're going to have to work on that, because some of you for the long haul may need to have some funding come at you. For real.
Yeah, unless you're a board member,
Right.
right? Government, piece of it.
Thank
Okay,
you, guys.
Thank you.